I'm Harper Reed. I'm 34, the youngest VP of Finance in our firm's history, and up until last Tuesday morning, I believed I could read people better than anyone. I'd built a career on instincts, knowing who to trust, who to promote, who to avoid. I prided myself on seeing what others missed, and I thought that was enough. That morning, I was reviewing Q3 projections in my glass-walled office on the 32nd floor. My assistant Elise sat at her desk, just beyond the glass, tapping away on her keyboard, like she always did, her dark hair tied back in that same tight braid. Then my phone rang. It was Hazel from HR. Her voice was too calm, too even, and it made the hair on my arms stand on end. She told me Elise had died in a car accident. This morning, around 5:40, I didn't respond right away. I was staring straight at Elise right there, maybe 10 feet from me. She hadn't been in an accident. She was alive, working, breathing, typing. I told Hazel she was mistaken. I even laughed a little awkwardly, thinking it must be some weird misunderstanding. But Hazel insisted. The police had called. There was an official report. Elise Turner confirmed deceased. Fatal injuries. No survivors. The room tilted slightly. I remember gripping the edge of my desk and watching the back of Elise's head completely still except for the rhythm of her typing. When she finally looked up and smiled at me, I felt the blood drain from my face. That smile, polite, warm, familiar, felt wrong now. Impossible. It was the same smile I'd seen every weekday morning for nearly 3 years. Only now I realized I didn't know who she really was. Hazel from HR arrived less than 10 minutes later, flanked by 2 security guards and our COO, Richard Levin. They didn't speak. They just walked straight past me and toward Elise's desk like this was all pre-planned. I followed behind them, my heels unsteady on the polished floor, my heart pounding with something between fear and confusion. The entire office was quiet. Phones still rang. Emails still pinged. But every head turned to watch as the woman we all thought was Elise stood up from her chair and looked genuinely startled. She asked what was going on, voice calm, but I saw the flicker too quick to be panic, too subtle for most to catch, but I saw it. Hazel pulled out a document. It was a death certificate. Elise Turner. Time of death. 4:43 a.m. this morning. Elise's, or whoever she was, expression didn't change. She said there had been a mistake, offered to show her ID, and offered to let us call her emergency contact. Everything about her tone was confident, routine. But then Hazel turned to me and asked the question that made the floor drop out beneath me. Do you remember the personal security question we set up when you hired Elise? I nodded. Of course I did. It was something no one else could possibly know. I looked at her and asked what the name of my first pet was. She smiled like it was nothing, like this whole thing was just a weird hiccup in HR records. She said it was Buttons, my calico cat. My stomach twisted. I never owned a cat. My first pet was a turtle named Milo. That was the moment I knew. The woman standing there was not Elise Turner. She wasn't my assistant. She wasn't even someone I recognized anymore. As security reached for her arms, she turned to me one last time, her voice low but steady. 3 years, Harper. You never even noticed. They told me I'd be placed on leave pending an internal investigation. No one looked me in the eye as I packed up my things. The same colleagues who once smiled when I walked past now kept their heads down, pretending to be buried in their screens. The office that had once felt like mine suddenly felt foreign. My name was still on the door, but everything inside had shifted. Even my chair felt colder, like it knew I didn't belong there anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch in the dark, replaying every interaction I'd ever had with her. Every moment that now felt tainted. Every conversation that suddenly seemed rehearsed. The hardest part wasn't that she lied. It was that I didn't see it. I missed every sign. I let her in. I trusted her with confidential files, personal stories, my calendar, and my instincts. HR's questions came next, sterile and sharp. When did I last verify her credentials? Who else did she interact with? Could I have given her access to company systems without oversight? They didn't say it directly, but I could feel the accusation in every pause. The shame settled in my chest like stone. I wasn't just the victim. I was the one who brought her in. I vouched for her, promoted her, introduced her to everyone as reliable, trustworthy Elise. I stopped answering calls. Emails went unopened. I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore, including myself. When you doubt your own judgment, everything else starts to unravel with it. It took a week of quiet digging and one favor from an old colleague before I found the real Elise Turner. She was living with her cousin in a small third-floor walk-up on the east side of the city. The building had no elevator, no nameplate, just a buzzing intercom and the sound of distant traffic. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, her skin pale and shadowed. There was medical equipment behind her, a portable oxygen tank, a monitor rows of labeled pill bottles on a folding table. She didn't flinch when I said my name. She just nodded slowly as if she had been expecting me. I stepped inside, careful not to trip over the coiled tubing near the door. The place was silent except for the soft hum of machines. She led me to the worn couch and sat across from me, moving slowly, like every step was calculated to conserve energy. Her eyes never left mine. I didn't know what to say at first. It felt surreal. I had spent 3 years thinking I knew her. In reality, I had never met her until that moment. She spoke first. Said her illness wasn't natural. It started just after she was hired. Fatigue, numbness, blurred vision. Doctors were baffled. It wasn't until she reached a specialist clinic in Switzerland that someone suggested it. Poison. Deliberate. Administered over time to mimic autoimmune symptoms. Not enough to kill her, just enough to keep her away. I felt sick. I couldn't move. My fingers curled into fists against my knees, and I didn't realize I was shaking until I looked down. Someone wanted her out of the way, and they needed her job beside me. She said she had no idea who or why, but she knew it wasn't random. It was planned. Personal. And now, someone else had been living her life using her name, standing right next to me, watching everything I did. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't about identity theft. This was about infiltration. Whoever orchestrated it hadn't just wanted Elise's spot. They wanted access to me. We didn't make a plan that night. We just sat there facing each other across that tiny living room and let the silence hold everything we didn't yet know how to say. But the decision was there, unspoken between us. We were going to find out who did this and why. The next morning, I returned with coffee notebooks and my old company-issued tablet. Elise brought out a folder she'd been compiling during her treatment. Names, timelines. A short list of executives whose daughters matched the imposter's age and profile. She had narrowed it down to 4. I filled in what I knew from inside the company: personnel logs, promotion records, behavioral red flags I had dismissed before. Elise listened carefully, asking questions I hadn't thought to ask. She had a sharp eye and a quiet way of connecting dots I hadn't realized were even on the page. It was Elise who caught it first. A board member, Gina Weller, had a daughter named Cassandra, who'd interned at another division briefly years ago. No photo on file, no further record. But she had studied theater and business, a combination that suddenly felt chillingly appropriate. The pieces clicked into place with sickening ease. Cassandra Weller had posed as Elise. She had shadowed me, learned my habits, gained access to our systems, and used my name to authorize everything she needed. And Gina had cleared the path for her every step of the way. By the end of the week, we had a wall of connections. Financial reports with quite a few anomalies, meeting overlaps, medical records. And behind it all, the unmistakable truth that someone powerful had orchestrated a long game with surgical precision. We didn't talk much about the damage. Not yet. Elise had lost years. I had lost my name, my reputation, and almost my career. But what we had now was a shared clarity. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure no one else became collateral for someone else's greed. Sitting there beside her, I no longer felt alone. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were a team, and we were going to bring the entire truth into the light no matter who it hurt. We chose Monday morning. The building would be busy, distracted, and flooded with weekly executive meetings. Elise would slip in early using her old access badge, while I walked in front of everyone as if nothing had changed. She texted me when she was inside. Systems accessed. 30 minutes. My hands shook as I slipped my phone back into my purse and stepped into the lobby. I wore the suit I used for board presentations, the one that made people stop and listen. I needed every edge. The security guard at the front desk tensed when he saw me. I didn't give him time to react. I raised my voice just enough to draw attention. Said I needed to see the board immediately. Said I had evidence of pension fraud. Everyone in the lobby stopped. Phones hovered mid-scroll. Conversations froze. That was the goal. Upstairs, Elise was working fast. She had practiced the night before, memorized the folder paths, the file structure, the naming conventions. She knew exactly what she needed. Her hands moved quickly, but carefully. The drive had to be clean. No digital fingerprints. Meanwhile, I was escorted into Warren's office. He was furious, of course. Told me I was out of line, that I was jeopardizing my future. I told him I knew about Cassandra, about the holding companies, about the money. I said it calmly, every word sharpened to cut through the noise. Elise sent me a second text. 20 minutes. Metadata confirms logins from Gina's network. It was working. I nodded subtly and kept stalling. I was asked to address the board. I pushed every emotional button I could. Reputation, liability, investor trust. The kind of language that made these men and women listen. 10 minutes left. Elise was pulling the last of the transfer authorizations. The files were encrypted, time-stamped, and quietly copied to 3 separate cloud backups. She wiped her activity logs as best she could and prepared to exit, but someone had triggered an alert. She texted again. "We've got a problem. I'm being tracked." My pulse spiked as Warren's voice faded into the background. I told him I needed a moment to collect myself, then slipped into the hallway, phone trembling in my hand. "Meet me at exit B, now." Her text was final. I pushed through a side stairwell, heart pounding with each step. The air was too thick. My heels are too loud. I didn't care. If we didn't get out now, everything we had would vanish. She was waiting at the door, her face pale, clutching a small external drive like it was life itself. "They know," she said. I grabbed her hand. "Then let's make sure they can't stop us." We hit the street, running, breath visible in the morning chill, hearts thudding louder than our footsteps. I unlocked the car with a shaky hand, and Elise jumped in, clutching the drive like it might vanish if she blinked. As I pulled into traffic, I checked the mirror and saw it. A black sedan trailing too close, too smooth to be a coincidence. Elise saw it too. She didn't say anything, but her hand gripped the door handle until her knuckles turned white. I took a left without signaling. The sedan followed. Another joined from the next block. They were boxing us in. We couldn't go home. We couldn't go to the police station. I made a hard turn toward the financial district. Downtown was the only place crowded enough to lose them. And at the heart of it, just 6 blocks ahead, was the FBI's white-collar division. I called it out. Elise started snapping photos of the drive's contents with her phone, sending them to every contact we trusted. If we got stopped, the evidence would live beyond us. The rearview mirror showed a motorcycle weaving between cars now, closing in fast. We were 2 blocks away. Traffic thickened, slowing us down. One of the sedans cut into the lane beside us. I turned sharply into a delivery zone and bounced over a curb. The motorcycle rider pulled alongside, reaching for something inside their jacket. My breath caught. Elise ducked. I swerved into them just enough to knock them off balance. They skidded out across the sidewalk, helmet shattering against a mailbox. I didn't look back. Ahead, the FBI building came into view, but another sedan swung in front of us, forcing me to hit the brakes. Behind us, more doors opened. Men in suits approached too fast, too focused. Elise shouted, "The sunroof!" I hit the switch. She stood, raised her arms, and screamed for help. Her voice rang over the chaos. "FBI, help! They're trying to stop us." Pedestrians froze. Phones came out. Eyes locked on our car. That was all it took. A patrol cruiser turned the corner and saw the scene unfold. Sirens erupted. The men backed off. I rolled down my window and yelled that we had evidence of corporate fraud. Elise held up the drive like a badge. Within minutes, we had 2 more cruisers escorting us the final blocks. The sedan behind us disappeared down a side street. We made it. But the fear in Elise's eyes told me one thing. We weren't safe yet. Not even close. The room was too quiet. Gina sat with her legs crossed unreadable behind designer glasses, while Warren fidgeted beside her like a man who knew he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I slid the draft of my resignation across the table, the kind of gesture they'd been waiting for since this started. I kept my tone measured, said I was ready to move on if we could come to terms. No lawsuits, no press, just a clean exit and a generous package. Warren nodded, almost eager. But Gina wasn't smiling yet. She was waiting for something more. I let the silence hang, then added that I'd reconsidered testifying, that without context, the files Elise and I had collected would seem circumstantial, that I could make them disappear if needed. Gina leaned in slightly just enough. She asked what I wanted. I said double the offer and a consulting seat at one of their holding firms. Something off the radar. She tilted her head amused, maybe even impressed. Said she always knew I had teeth. Warren looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Then I brought up Cassandra. Said I knew she was Gina's daughter. That she'd been the one behind the reports, the forged signatures, the poisoning. Gina didn't deny it. She just said sometimes to protect what's yours, you take risks. I asked her if it was all worth it. The embezzlement, the lies, the betrayal. She said it was a necessary cost of maintaining control in a world full of weak men and louder women. Then I smiled and thanked her for the confirmation. The door opened. 2 agents stepped inside. Gina froze as I placed the recording device on the table. She didn't speak. Neither did Warren. The silence this time was mine, and it was the loudest thing in the room. It happened fast after that. Gina and Cassandra were arrested within the week, their assets frozen, their connections unraveling under federal scrutiny. The company tried to control the damage, but the story was already too big, too clear, and too damning. I was offered my job back, a promotion, a public apology. I turned it all down. I didn't want to walk back into a building that had watched me drown in silence and do nothing. Instead, I started over. Now I work with a nonprofit that investigates corporate fraud and whistleblower retaliation. It's not glamorous, but it's real. It matters. Elise is still recovering, but she's getting stronger every day. She started painting again. She laughs more. Sometimes we sit together and don't say anything at all. And that feels like peace. People ask if I feel vindicated. The answer is yes and no. What they did to Elise can't be undone. What I let happen under my watch still haunts me, but we stopped them. We exposed the lie, and we made sure no one else would get hurt in the same way. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. A name cleared. A voice heard. A truth finally known. I learned that silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the space where fear grows. And the only way to kill it is to speak. Even if your voice shakes, even if no one listens at first, you speak anyway.